Changemakers is all about founders that are making incredible positive change in the world. So I'm really intrigued to start from the beginning. When you realized that you wanted to be part of the wonky veg or wonky fruit revolution, how did that come to be? And what was the thing that instigated you to want to make change?
So my co-founder and I, Jack, we both come from farming backgrounds. So myself from West Sussex, just down the A3. And we grew up firsthand seeing that in the UK and across the Western world, a third of fruit and vegetables goes to waste. So it doesn't end up on consumers' plates. And we would see this and think this is just absolutely mad. Why does our supply chain allow this waste? And if you were to contextualize it in another way, the CO2 that is emitted from food waste, if that was a land mass, it would be the third largest CO2 emitting country after the US and China. So the output from it, in a negative sense, the negative externality is very bad. But then also the input is absolutely crazy as well. Why do we put so much resource into creating this fruit and veg if it doesn't go to the end consumer? It's just absolutely mad. So when I met Jack, we started looking for ways that we could use this fruit and vegetables and to create a product that would mean that it would be able to go to a good end destination. And when we looked at beverage chillers up and down the country, they were just packed full of sugary and artificially filled ingredients. And we thought, why don't we buy this fruit and veg from farmers and infuse it into spring water to create a great tasting drink that doesn't have any of the sugar or the sweetener. So that was the genesis for the idea. We then stumbled across Virgin Startup that really were the catalyst for us developing our business. I'd been to university and read economics, but really had no understanding of the nuts and bolts of starting a business. And we were given a loan from Virgin Startup, and also we had a fantastic mentor, a guy called Ben Keane. And
we love Ben Keane.
We all love Ben Keane. And Ben was fantastic because he had started many businesses before, and essentially speaking to him was like reading a cheat book of starting a business quickly. And he really enabled us to really make sure that we took that first step to actually produce the product and get it out there, which I can come on to a little bit more later on.
Raising awareness a lot recently around the impact of sweeteners in drinks, and I know you touched on that briefly there, and I wonder if you want to bring that to life a little bit more around why you wanted to focus in on soft drinks in particular.
Definitely. So actually 2 days ago was a very big day. 2 days ago was a very big day because the World Health Organization came out with a report that they have been conducting over the last 6 to 9 months. And in that, they say that sweeteners are not a suitable replacement for sugar in any food and beverage products if you want to lose weight. And the research that has gone into sweeteners so far has been heavily lobbied by some big multinational drinks brands. I remember this is online, so I probably shouldn't say any names. And so 2.1 billion is the size of the sweetener industry. So it's a very sizable industry that some big multinational brands want to make sure that that consumers believe that sweeteners are good for them. So this World Health Organization report came out a couple of days ago, and it's going to be a very seismic moment for both the food and the beverage industry. Over the last year, raising awareness about the issues of sweetener has become more and more prevalent. So a very famous nutritionist in the UK, one of the leading nutritionists here, who lectures at University College London, a guy called Tim Spector, he's been talking about it a lot recently, and it feels like it's really the start of the wave that is going to really start building further and further, and consumers will be educated more on the issues of sweetener as not being a suitable replacement for sugar.
Wow, so that has come at a pretty, well, it's great for you, right? That's great news for you to be able to say, look, we have a brilliant alternative for that. That's really great to hear. So I wanted to like kind of go back in time again. I know that that was important for us to talk about, but you mentioned you saw this problem and you found a solution along with Jack, and you heard about Virgin Startup and the loan to help you get it off the ground. But I'm really curious about the journey before that step, before the moment where you were like, right, we're going to actually do this. Like, how long were you talking about this idea and kind of throwing it back and forth between friends? Like, what did that look like? I'd love to hear a bit about that. And I'm sure there's many people in the audience that are probably in that stage that are like, do I do it? Do I not? Shed some light on that for us.
If in doubt, do it.
Love that.
I think Jack and I, we spent about 6 months trying to come up with the perfect product, to perfect the perfect flavors, the perfect brand, the perfect identity. And then we spoke to Virgin Startup, and Ben Keane said, guys, you should read this book. It's by a guy called Eric Ries. It's called the Lean Startup. Has anybody heard of it?
Yeah.
A few people nodding their heads. Yeah, nearly everyone. That's great. And we were really struggling with trying to perfect the product to a point that we were never going to do it. And after reading Eric's book, we then took the plunge to not creating a perfect product, to making that minimum viable product. And so what we did, we literally spent 3 months every weekend, still doing our day jobs. We set up a little table in parks around London, and we chopped up wonky fruit and veg. We let it rest in just a vat of water and had a soda stream. And we infused these drinks, and literally everybody in this room could do the same process. And we just tried it on people passing by. And we said, would you swap your usual sugary and sweetener-filled beverage for something as simple but delicious like this? And the resounding feedback that we got was yes. And so that gave us the confidence to really go for it. The other interesting insight that we had as well was we didn't think that people would care about wonky fruit and veg. So we had on our can, we talk about wonky front of pack on the front of the can. But back then, we had it on the back of our can. We didn't think anybody would really care about that. In the press, not many people were talking about the issue of food waste. And so we didn't bring it to the front of our brand, which was a very good learning from doing these samplings, because we would sample passers-by and we would say, do you want to try these drinks? And then when they came back 3 weeks later, we had 2 unique propositions with Dash. First was no sugar or sweetener, which was our lead message, and the other was wonky fruit and veg. But the thing that the consumers said when they came back 3 weeks later was, oh, you're the guys that infuse wonky fruit, as opposed to you're the guys that have a drink without any sugar or sweetener. So that was a key insight for us, and that fundamentally changed the way that we spoke about the brand and really brought forward that message of food waste, which is now front and center today. So sampling in parks around London, and we pitched a Virgin Startup, and then went through the Virgin Startup Accelerator, learning all the nuts and bolts of starting the business, putting together a business plan, setting the company up on Company's House, starting out on social media, all that kind of good stuff, and just getting it out there. And then we received feedback. We knew the product wasn't perfect. If you scroll back through our Instagram, all the way back to about 2016, there's some very different branding of our products. And that was the branding that we initially used as our minimum viable product to then create what we think these beautiful looking cans today.
It's absolutely beautiful. I think that's one of the things that makes it stand out so much and make it so recognizable. And I love the story you told there about how at first you were trying to get the product perfect, and then you decided to go for the MVP, or what's good enough for us to get this in front of people. And I feel like there's such a nice link there between the fact that the fruit that you're using is imperfect, and you went down that approach to actually get it out there and in the hands of people. As well, I think there's a massive learning there around getting your idea in front of customers as soon as possible and getting that live feedback. I'm curious to hear if that feedback from customers has changed over the 6 years. By the way, Dash celebrated their 6th birthday yesterday.
We did. Big party last night.
Yeah.
There are a few withered heads this morning from the team.
We can do a bigger cheer than that. Yeah. Congratulations. That is incredible. I spoke a little bit about the scale of Dash these days from those humble beginnings, but I'd love for anyone that doesn't know to hear a little bit about the scale and growth that you've experienced over those amazing 6 years up until your birthday.
So Dash we're the quickest growing beverage brand in the UK. This year we'll sell about 24 million cans. That scale I can't believe. I don't know who's buying them. I honestly don't. Because I remember when we produced our first batch of cans back in 2017, we negotiated so hard with the can manufacturers to reduce the minimum order quantity of cans to a bespoke minimum level, which was 200,000 cans for our first production run. And I remember when we made this first batch of cans and we looked up at them and they were on huge pallets all around us, Jack and I. All you could see was lemon and cucumber cans. And I remember looking around at Jack and thinking, oh shit, I don't know how we're going to sell these in a year. And we very quickly did. We ended up selling them in about 5 months. But today, what we've looked to try and do is not just use our platform to raise awareness about food waste in the UK, but also globally as well. So today we export to about 20 international markets. Australia, we also manufacture. So we also infuse locally grown Aussie wonky fruit just outside Melbourne with delicious spring water that's from Australia as well. And that's our APAC hub. So from there, we export to New Zealand, Hong Kong, Singapore. And yes, we do. We think we've come a good distance, but there's quite a lot more to do.
Woo! That sounds like you've been incredibly busy over that time. I'm really curious about how you have maintained the purpose of the organization in that time and in that time of rapid growth. I should have mentioned in the intro actually that Dash is a certified B Corp, which is incredible. And I think that you're a real case study for how purpose can drive profit and how it can, drive success of an organization. But I can imagine that when you're growing at pace, it can be difficult to always link back to that purpose and the why and the greater good of what you're trying to achieve. How have you managed that in this journey?
I think we've managed it from making sure that everybody who joins the business is sustainably minded. So my last interview question for any new employee that joins Dash is, how does sustainability manifest itself in your life? And I often get a bit of a shocked look because nobody's ever rehearsed that question. But I think it's absolutely fundamental to make sure that everybody on the team does really care about sustainability and our mission as well. So there are three core ESG pillars that we have at Dash. So the first, as you said, is B Corp. Has everybody heard of B Corp? Lots of nodding heads. As pretty much everybody here knows, B Corp is an accreditation for sustainably minded brands. It is one of the hardest accreditations to get. Of every 100 applicants that apply for B Corp, 2.5 actually get it. So 2.5% out of 100 people get the accreditation. So it's a very hard thing to get. So B Corp, infusing wonky fruits is obviously fundamental to what we do, and raising awareness about the issue of food waste. And then the third thing is Dash is a carbon neutral business. And so what we do is we use carbon sequestration. And so what that means is we actually take carbon out of the air and put it into the ground. So that is a great thing that our farmer Hilden, which is he's based in Leicestershire, he's absolutely fantastic at making sure that we're able to use the most advanced carbon sequestration techniques out there.
Awesome. And I really want to pick up on the point around hiring, because I love the fact that you ask an unexpected question in your hiring process. And clearly that's a very values-driven question. And I think for anyone who is thinking about bringing people into their organization, especially if you have a purpose-driven business, getting that values alignment is really key. Like, I think you want to bring different people into the organization, but there's some things that are so core to your business and the way it runs that if there's a mismatch, like if there's a mismatch with regards to what sustainability means to them, that's when your purpose can be watered down. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you've grown the team, how many people are in the team now, and what culture looks like at Dash.
Culture at Dash is a fun one, demonstrated by our 6th birthday party last night. We've still got balloons all over our office. I think with the culture side, it is really important. At Dash, we've had one person leave the business in 6 years. And I think that making sure that the culture of the business is front and center is really important to both Jack and I. We have a fantastic head of culture in the company. She's called Sophie, and she is absolutely brilliant. Tomorrow morning, it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week. Tomorrow morning, we have a mental health awareness workshop. And we have a coach that is dialing in actually from Australia to give the workshop over Zoom. And what we try and do is really try and make sure that everybody on the team is feeling very well connected, and they have 3 different things with their Dash time. The first is that they really believe and pull in the same direction of our mission of Wonky Fruit. The second is they grow themselves. We want to make everybody that works at Dash as outstanding as they can possibly be. And then the third thing is to have a fantastic work-life balance, and that personal relationship and personal balance is something that's very important to us. So those 3 things are really key and the bedrock of our HR.
Gosh, I absolutely love that. I'm a bit biased because culture is my thing, but yeah, that sounds amazing. And who wishes they could have been at the 6th birthday party yesterday? I know I am. I've got FOMO, and I mean, I never would have been invited anyway, but there we go. Maybe next year.
Definitely next year.
Yeah, awesome. So we spoke about a bit of your relationship with the team, and I, as a fellow co-founder myself, I'm really interested about your relationship with Jack and how that's kind of changed and evolved over the years. And maybe there's a part to this that is, so I was listening to a podcast on the way here, and the speaker shared something that I found quite frightening as a co-founder, where they said they don't know of any co-founder relationship that's ended well, which I hope Alicia, my co-founder, isn't listening to this, because I'm like, we're in it for the long haul. And I hope that, you know, it's the same for you as well. But there is ups and downs, right? Like running a business, a startup, especially I think for yourselves going into a new category, and taking on some Goliaths of the industry. I can only imagine how hard that must have been for you and Jack. So I'd love to hear how you've kind of managed your relationship as co-founders, and personally, if you have any tips on how to maintain that for the long haul, I would love to hear them.
Enjoy the successes when they come along. Absolutely key. I think when as you'll know, running a business, it is hard to find the time to just go and have a beer, go and have dinner together, to celebrate the wins. You can't always just keep on plowing through your inbox and the next thing to do. You do just have to stop, pause, and enjoy it when success comes along, because otherwise it won't happen at all. And I think in the early days with Jack, I definitely wouldn't have started Dash on my own. Definitely wouldn't have done it, because the lows that you get when stuff goes wrong, and there were a lot of things that went wrong in the early days, it is really crushing. And so having someone that you can go for a beer with at the end of the day and just say, that was pretty rubbish, is the thing that really does keep you going. I think as we've gone and grown the business, our roles have separated more from spending all the time every day together when you're starting the business, to then really honing in on each other's skill sets. And so Jack does more of the marketing stuff. He's an amazing marketeer. So the look, the feel, the tone of voice, everything that you see with the brand, that is all Jack. And I do more of the commercial side. So I think in the early days, when you're treading on each other's toes every day, and you are there's a lot of crossover in the work that you're doing. It's a bit more testing, and then when the business does grow and you end up specializing in skills that you're better at, then it definitely becomes more straightforward and streamlined.
Awesome. That's such great advice. Celebrate the successes. I imagine even the big and the small ones, and understand each other's strengths and when it's time to kind of hone in on those. I love that. I'm going to ask one more question before we open up to our lovely audience and online. In the interest of talking about celebrating your successes, I'd love to hear what moment or change in the last 6 years are you most proud of? Big and small, big and small.
It's a good question. I should have pondered this one when I was coming here. I think the earliest best moment that we had, does it have to be one? Can I
no,
go
oh my gosh.
Okay.
Celebrate as much as you like. We're here for it.
I think the first one was when we first went to the Lee Valley, which is in Essex, and we went to our cucumber farmer, and we literally bought his cucumbers off him, brought it to Herefordshire, and we manufactured our first batch of 200,000 cans. That was the best moment, because this idea that we had, this crazy idea that buyers, your parents, your friends say this is absolutely mad, including a lot of passers-by on the weekend that tried the trains. When we finally created that product, having come up with the idea of buying it from farmers and bringing it all the way to creating that end product, that was definitely the best early moment. I think more recently wasn't necessarily a moment, but getting through the COVID period, I think was a very good moment as well. In February 2020, 65% of our total sales were pubs, bars, restaurants, and exports, literally overnight, that went under, literally overnight. And quite fortunately, we had always tried to have quite a contemporary sales channel in online. And so our website and Amazon is something that we really try to develop. We had just put in a new subscription service literally about 3 weeks before COVID struck. And I remember speaking to Jack when we had that first week of lockdown saying, this is not looking great, mate. And then every day since that, our web shop just started having record day after record day after record day. And that year we managed to grow 100% and get through the COVID period. But it was definitely a tricky one that I'm proud that we got through.
Amazing. I love that. Can we have a round of applause for those celebrations? Okay, so I feel like it's only fair that I let someone else ask questions. So does anyone in the audience have a question? Hey, at the front. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the story. Could you talk a bit about how you got your first clients? And you mentioned you've been developing the online channel. Have you been doing this from the very beginning, or is this something you started doing a little bit later? I'm coming from a point where I'm sort of at a pre-launch stage of a drinks brand as well. And I've got a mentor who's obviously, right? and my mentor is like, he's telling me like, build an audience, go direct to consumer first before you approach retail. What would be your take on this?
The landscape was a bit different back in 2017. Online wasn't as much of as a big sales channel as it is today. So today, 36% of consumers buy their food and beverage products online, 36%. But it was much smaller back then. We had our first retailer, Selfridges, that took the product. I wouldn't like to count the amount of emails that I sent to the buyer to get through to her. It's very, very tricky getting through to retailers, very tricky. And we always say that you have to have 75% persistence to get through. And then once you've got your foot in the door, to have 25% of charm to be able to get the sale. The way that we wanted to build the brand from a top-down premium approach was to launch the brand and products into retailers that would really talk about our story. And so we targeted great retailers like Selfridges, Whole Foods, Planet Organic, As Nature Intended. And having the product stocked in retailers like that and Soho House, when a consumer would come across it, they would advertise the product very well. And so consumers would buy it, think it tastes great, and then they would read about the story as well. And that part is fundamental, because if we had gone too quickly into supermarkets, we wouldn't have succeeded. Because nobody would have heard about the products, understood the story. Dash is a more premium product because we use great quality ingredients. And so a consumer going away from their usual mainstream product that is less expensive to then this new product that infuses wonky fruit, what the hell is that? That's quite a step. So the way that we built it was really trying to target those retailers first. I think there's there are good parallels with targeting those retailers and telling the story first, as there is with online. And the way that online develops, obviously with social media, email, adverts, you're able to tell that story as well. So I would definitely encourage online to be a great platform for launching. We did both platforms together. So we did online and then in-store retail at the same time.
Thank you.
When you ask your question, also tell us about your business, like you did. That was lovely. Hi.
Hi, I'm Julian,
Hi,
founder of The Impact. My co-founder is also here, Fabian.
Very good.
we're mostly interested in hearing a little bit about, you said Sophie's doing a great job as a head of culture in your company.
Very good job.
Besides mental health, do you also do something where you support your social mission outside your core business, which is fighting food waste? Do you engage with charities that do fight food waste as well? Is there anything on top of that that you do, which maybe also helps you with your B Corp certification, or is that something that they ask for?
So we've always worked with a charity called Feedback, and Feedback are one of the leading food waste charities in the UK, started by a great guy called Tristram Stewart, and Tristram is one of the leading lights in food waste. So we have gone, in the very early days, Feedback were fundamental in introducing us to farmers via a process called gleaning. And gleaning is where farmers will have excess fruit and veg, and they will try and marry people that will be able to buy it from those farmers and prevent it from going to waste. So Feedback were absolutely brilliant in the early days for both helping us find our fruit and veg. We do gleaning days as a team. So when it comes to the harvest season, we're picking apples, rhubarb, pears. That is usually around late August to mid-October time. We've got a big campaign going live 2 months' time with the Phoenix Project, who are another leading food waste charity here in the UK. To date, we have donated through the proceeds of our people buying our products, 90,000 meals, and this year we're looking to get to above 150,000. So how we do that is in store during a given time period. If anyone buys a can, we will donate a meal to those who need it most. Around the corner from our office in Tottenham Court Road, we have 2 volunteers from our team every month that volunteers at a soup kitchen. So there are a few bits that we do. We could always do more, but we think it's a good start.
Yeah, amazing, especially interesting how you used the philanthropic strategy almost like with them to get your customers or to make the first supply connections. Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Hello.
My name's Sunny. I'm a founder of a social enterprise branding consultancy. So we also work with purpose-led brands that are solving societal or environmental issues. My question was also around B Corp. So I'm going to switch it now to another question I've had to think on the spot, but it was actually something that did come to mind. But what are the next goals, like the next 5 to 10 years out for Dash, in terms of what are you looking to achieve around the business, the purpose, where you want to get to? I think picking on the points that you mentioned earlier, I'm going through my B Corp. I'm in verification phase, and scores have just gone up. Things that I kind of thought, I'm not sure about this, and it's a phenomenal journey. And I'm hoping I make that 2.5% to the cut. But I'm also thinking front of mind that, gosh, this is a massive. It plays in my mind that if I get this, I have to keep it and I have to honour it. And I partly think I need to bring someone into the business to live up to that purpose, because there's no point putting all that commitment out there, and it's a continuous job. It's taken me about a year to go through all the questions, and I'm constantly thinking, gosh, I need to do better than this. I need to make sure we're constantly building out. So what are the kind of like next 5 to 10 years for you to do that?
Next 5 to 10 years, we are barely scratching the surface of, firstly, our mission of raising awareness about food waste. Back in 2017, it was very, very seldomly talked about. But now in the UK, a lot of people are aware about it. We want to be able to deliver our products globally. And the issue of consumers drinking beverages with sugar and sweetener is not just UK based, it's an issue globally. So getting that, being able to offer consumers our drinks, not just in the UK and Europe, but also in Asia, North America, South America, is an aspiration for the future. We have a small team that are based in Australia, and so where we manufacture there, we have a team of 3 people. This year they'll sell about 4 million cans there, so they punch above their weight for 3 full-time people. And in Australia, it's really the start of our our beverage category, so the type of beverage that Dash is, which doesn't have any sugar or sweetener. So we want to be the #1 brand in the APAC region. We're the #1 brand here in the UK. So it's developing it region by region. We don't want to go too quickly and spread ourselves too thin. I think that's a way that many businesses do fail. We only have a finite amount of resource as a scale-up business. So we've got to make sure that we spend our money wisely.
Sorry, follow-up. Do you think about the environmental impact in terms of, like, I was listening earlier on, I was thinking, gosh, is this all being shipped out from here? So from a impact in terms of water usage, but you mentioned earlier you've got a hub set out that's serving APAC, but with the growth, is that the plan to think about other hubs? Because there is that environmental impact.
Definitely. So the issue that we have is that the beverages, to manufacture them, the minimum order quantity is very, very high. So what we'd ideally like to do is set up a hub that is local in each market. We did that very well in Australia. We did that through COVID. We had never met our manufacturers, never met the farmers, never met our finance back office team, any of the retailers. We did it all over Zoom and launched in Australia. And so we want to be able to then replicate that same blueprint of success in other markets. So that's definitely an ambition for us going forward.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, so we'll go there, and then we'll work our way back around. And then we're going to go online. Okay, we'll have one question here, we'll go online, and then we'll come back.
Okay. Hi, my name's Sue.
Hi, Sue.
My brand is a solid hair care brand called Kind2. And I'm really interested to find out about the feedback that you got from some of the buyers very early on and how that influenced ultimately decisions you made about the product and the brand.
The buyer is one person, so don't listen to them. They may think they know what they're talking about, which they definitely do most of the time. But I think the key is just making sure that you don't change the fundamentals of your brand and business for one person. That is absolutely key. Even if the commercial upside is relatively high, especially in the early days. You know, if you get a big listing, that could fundamentally change your brand. However, in the long run, it's not going to be necessarily the best thing to do. So I think just making sure that you do take on board their feedback, but then getting lots of the feedback from other people as well.
Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Thank you so much. Teamwork, love it. We have some questions online. Shall I pass you the mic?
Yeah. Thanks. We got a couple. The first is from Kaylin, watching on YouTube. Sorry, I've got a cold. At what point did you decide to leave the 9 to 5 and go full-time with the business? And what influenced this decision?
Hi, Kaylin. What influenced us is not having that penny dropping moment where we suddenly thought, let's leave. It built up over a number of months. And originally, Jack and I, we wanted to have more of the romantic idea of using the spring water on Jack's farm, using the fruit and veg on his farm to infuse into our drinks. We then quite quickly found out that to set up a canning facility, it cost about 15 million quid, and we weren't going to do that anytime soon. So it really took a period of time to persuade ourselves that starting the business was a good idea. So it probably took about 6 months when we were at our previous job to then to leave it and go for Dash. And then it took about a year or so after we left our jobs to then producing our first batch of 200,000 cans that you have today.
And then another one's about fundraising. So I see you've recently raised a multi-million-pound investment round. Can you tell us a little bit more about the whole Dash funding journey to date?
Yeah, of course. So the first funding journey, or first part of it, started with Virgin Startup. So Virgin were absolutely brilliant at giving us a loan. And that meant that we were able to create our MVP and test it, getting the feedback. We then begged, borrowed, and stole from family and friends to produce our first batch of cans, create the branding, the design work. That meant that we got ourselves off the ground, and we were able to have a little bit of proof of concept. We were probably in about 150 stores by around November 2017 that we raised our first round of investment that was about 250K. That was through angel investors, so high net worths, through SCIS. And then throughout our journey, we've then raised more and more capital raises. We've gone through further milestones. The key for us, and the learning, is just making sure that we go to investors, one, when you don't need cash, because then you're not in a very good negotiating position. And then the second thing is just trying to have as much proof of concept as possible. Now, it does come back to a point of one can just get a bit worried and kick the can down the road too far, trying to get that great proof of concept. So I wouldn't leave it too late, but having great bits of data of how well the product is selling, consumer feedback, marketing, aspirations in the future, that is really key for those investor pitches. And to date, we've raised around £21 million.
Hello. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, and thank you, Natalie. I'm here.
Hello.
Hello.
What's your name?
Ines.
Hello, Ines.
I'm not a founder yet, but thank you so much for sharing all of this. It's super interesting, and thank you, Natalie, for asking so great questions. My question is, I'm amazed that you said that since you started, only one employee left Dash. So my question is, how did you do this? So many companies have great values, but really struggle to grow and keep the employees they started with. So how do you keep your employees and make them happy?
Something that is really important to us at Dash is that everybody who is at the business for a year then has share options in the business. And we set up our employee share pool very early on. And the share pool is set up through the HMRC EMI structure. That means that the share options, they have very good tax benefits when they are realized. And I think that's been a really key part of making sure that everyone pulls in the same direction, because everybody owns a part of the business. So share options, I think, has been very important. I think having that North Star of the mission does focus the mind. And it means that when anybody joins, they know exactly what they're signing up to. And it really does give clarity on a day-to-day role. If there's a decision that is split, then it's always going to be the way, coming back to our 3 sustainable pillars that we have. And then I think that the third thing is having a lot of fun along the way. And I always say to the team, we're not surgeons. We're not saving people's lives. What we're doing is we're making delicious, sustainably sourced beverages. Let's have a bit of fun while we go around it.
Thank you so much.
I think we've got time for 2 more questions. Oh, right. So we'll go one here, and then we'll go one there. If we do have time for any more, we'll squeeze them in.
Hi, thank you. I'm Emily, and I do branding and web design for purpose-led businesses.
Hi, Emily.
Obviously, you talk about putting purpose over profit, and that's a lot of our ethos probably in this room. You talked about your brand messaging and how consumers loved your story and they want to share your story. But retailers and maybe restaurants and things don't necessarily understand or care about that stuff. How did your messaging differ between pitching to consumers versus pitching to businesses?
From a sustainability perspective?
Yeah.
A lot of the retailers that we do work with now, they do have sustainability pillars. Now ESG is such a widely spoken about topic that we are able to fit in with a few of the targets that they have. So from a way that we've set up the business, it does often marry with both retailers, both supermarkets, also restaurant chains, for example, as well. Everyone is, restaurant chains and cafes concerned about food waste, for example. I think the way that we have differentiated our messaging between businesses and consumers is businesses, they have a sustainability manager, a sustainability team, and they will have potentially more developed knowledge and experience in the world of ESG. Therefore, we have slightly more advanced KPIs that we would talk about them with. Whereas with consumers, for example, we had on the front of our cans, we still have it on this batch of cans. So we have our carbon footprint score here. So our climate footprint here, so we have 110 grams of CO2 that is emitted per can, 110 grams. Your average consumer doesn't know what that means, and they don't know how to relate it to another product, and neither would I unless I spent quite a lot of time looking at it. What we're doing with our cans front of pack is we're now changing it to talking about carbon neutrality. People will understand carbon neutrality, and that's more of a widely spoken topic. So making sure that the messaging is as clear to consumers as possible has been something that we've learned when we've grown.
Thank you. Do you feel, sorry, little follow-up question. Do you feel like since you started that these bigger businesses are caring more about sustainability genuinely rather than using it greenwashing, for example? Do you feel like the appetite for it is growing?
100%. I genuinely do, yeah. You're always going to get some people that are just trying to use it as a tick box exercise, but I genuinely do believe that a lot of businesses now, they really do care about it and are driving change.
Thank you. Did you see we had a question over here?
I have three quick questions, so
Brilliant.
We might have to ask these at another time. Are you
Quick fire questions, okay.
Are you staying around, or do I need to ask them here?
I'm staying around.
I can probably ask them then. So I'll mention one of them. How did you approach your first hires? So was it friends? Was it old uni people? Did you use an agency? I think I'm a co-founder of a sustainable dog products brand called Tangle, and we're struggling to decide exactly who you hire at the very start of that business, and who you can trust to bring along the journey.
Yeah, I think it's a really tricky one. The early hires. Becca, who was mad enough to join us in November 2017, who's obviously still around today. She interned at Dash. She interned for about 2 months, and we weren't planning to hire anyone at that stage. However, she just got it. She was absolutely brilliant. And she was able to roll her sleeves up, get stuck in, loved the mission that we were building, and we just couldn't let her go. So we weren't actually looking to hire anyone at that stage. The second person that we hired, who is called Liv, she's now working for Dash out in Australia, in Sydney, lucky her. Liv, again, we were recommended by people. We were looking to hire at that stage, and she studied environmental science at university at Durham, and had a very key passion in food waste. And so immediately when we sat down, we just knew to get on, and that's really meant that she's still kicking around today. So to answer your question, I suppose it's quite tricky to say. We have hired through recruiters, and it's definitely a way that is less straightforward to try and get people that you will know really love the brand and the mission. But I suppose it's then all about the interview process and just making sure that you can identify the right people.
Thank you.
So just a quick one on that. So we produce a series of founder guides on a range of different topics. So things like how to build a business on a budget, how to change business for good, and one of them is how to build a winning team, where we basically kind of collate the different ways startups have built teams. So I'll send that on to you. Might be useful. Cool. Thank you. I'm just looking at Joe. Can we squeeze in one more question? We can. Who hasn't asked a question? Did you have a question? Go on.
Someone who hasn't.
Sorry, final question. Thank you.
Hi, nice
Hello.
to meet you. My name's Tamron. I've got a creative brand called Crazy Lee Creations.
Very good to meet.
Interesting question. Where did you get the name Dash from? And why did you call them wonky fruit?
Water with a dash of flavor. So more of a descriptive term. I think we went down that route because at the time nobody who created a product that didn't have any sugar or sweetener. So we wanted to go down the more descriptive route. So hopefully consumers would understand it a bit more easily. The word wonky is a great one.
It's very memorable.
It's very hard to translate. I was in Paris last week and speaking to a few retailers there, and the question did come up, how are we going to translate wonky? I didn't quite have the answer there and then. I think wonky is it's a very charismatic, quite British, quite quirky word that I think is a bit more memorable than surplus, for example. And it epitomized Jack and I's personality a bit better.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to be really cheeky and squeeze in one question while I get the mic back to Nat. So building on that, so the Dash brand hasn't fundamentally changed in 6 years. It feels like you guys kind of nailed it straight out of the gate, where I guess a lot of people when they're starting out, they build brands that are quite scrappy, they kind of evolve, they rebrand, they change. Can you just tell me a little bit about that kind of branding process, from name, tone of voice, use of language, kind of visual design? Did you use a freelancer? Did you go through an agency? Kind of like, how did you think through that? Because I guess in the long term, it's paid off well for you.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we created our minimum viable product, and with that we had relatively basic branding. We got a great friend of a friend who created the look, the feel, and some initial packaging on the can. That is when we did the sampling in parks around London, got feedback from retailers, and so making sure that we just put ourselves out there in the first place. We weren't afraid, which was a big hurdle for us at the beginning. Just putting ourselves out there to get that feedback was really key. So we definitely didn't nail it with our MVP, but then when we rebranded, we used a great design agency called Horse Studio. We still work with them today, Sarah and Ian. They're an amazing husband and wife team based in northeast London. And I think the key, or one of the keys that we found with brands, is just having that consistency. And so us having the same designers all the way through the duration of Dash so far has been very beneficial to making sure that the look, the feel, the tone of voice, everything that's developed and created, even if it's on the other side of the world in Australia, still feels Dash.
Amazing. Wow, that was so much to digest there. Thank you for being so generous and open about your journey and your experience. I think all of us have taken away a whole host. I'm going to watch this back because I need to make notes during. Can we give Alex a round of applause?